Hey, it's MichaelMana, and today we are going to be starting almost like a new series on the channel where we're going to be building fantasy cities based off the multiple different races inside different fantasy novels and movies and such. Today we're going to be working on a wood elf city. I took inspiration off Lord of the Rings and others, where we're going to be building a very, very big tree and some other stuff along with it. So, let's get into it. Alright, now the first thing I'm going to do is make a world painter map. As you can see, the most important parts are the cliffside and lake. Of course, looking at this, it is definitely missing something. That thing being trees. So, I started work on some custom trees. As you can see, I'm making some thick, luscious trees. I even added some lanterns later on to brighten them up. Not only that, but I made some cherry blossoms to add a little bit more color to our forest. After that, I placed them all around the map, and this was the result. Now that our scenery is done, we can start working on the main build itself, the city, which is going to be a giant tree. Right now, I'm making the trunk of the tree. I'm also using gold as a temporary block because of its border texture. I'm also adding vines that are jutting and spreading out the sides of the tree. The parts where I'm using iron blocks instead of gold, I plan on making green vines out of. Alright, now we're going to need to work on the branches, but first I'm going to tell you how I plan on doing that. I'm using the world edit command, cell convex, which allows me to basically mark multiple points. And then from the base of the tree, pretty much, so like imagine this is the base. I'll be going here, up one, and then up one. Imagine that's like a branch outline, and doing a curve, and we'll just say, for purposes, we'll do oak block. The branch will be a little bigger than this. I'll make it a little bit thicker, but that's basically the concept of it. Alright, now let's make some branches. Because of how many I need, this part was pretty time consuming. And boom. Okay, we're coloring it in. This part didn't take too long, and the result was pretty good. With some custom brushes, I made the leaves. I spread this all along the branches. But we're not done yet. Now I'm adding in some different shades of green. Alright, now we need to detail the tree. First, I decided to make a waterfall out the front. And to make the tree look even more luscious, I add some moss growing on the sides of the tree. Our tree is missing some color, so I added some mushrooms spreading out the sides of the tree. Even this really big one. Now, of course, for our city to be a city, we're going to need some paths. A put them along the sides of the vines. Before we make the buildings of the city, we need to make the inside of the tree, which is going to have a throne room. Alright, so we're going to hollow out the inside of our tree. So we'll even give the inside a sky roof, which will add in some light. I made this moss platform and then the throne. And now we're connecting the paths to the throne. Alright, so for the buildings of this city, I wanted to make them hanging off the tree, kind of like birdhouses. I went around and made all the platforms for our buildings. And now here's a montage of me building a ton of houses by hand. Now we're adding in some chains holding up the building. And for some final touches, we're adding some vines on the sides of our buildings. Okay, now our city is done. Now we're going to work on the inside of the tree again. Then I added almost like a core to the tree. You can imagine that it was almost like giving life to the tree. Then I added some moss growing off the sides of the walls. And finally, some glowberries for that final detail. Our tree is basically done. Now I'm going to add some ambience, like these lights, which will glow up the tree at night. Then I made some pixies and birds. Now, after many hours of building, I finally finished it. If you couldn't tell, I am pretty happy with the end product. I mean, look at this thing. I am going to give a little tour around what it looks like, but I do want to keep one thing in mind, which is this build, it can only really be seen with night vision. I didn't really account for the amount of darkness the leaves would bring, and you see it's already like lagging out a little bit because of the shaders, but if I drink this, it gets really dark. That's a little bit more on the disappointing side, but it still looks good. And now I'm going to show this off. This I built in the test world and pasted it in here, but it's a praying mantis, and it's freaking huge as well. Of course, compared to everything else, it looks tiny, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I've probably shown this inside a little bit, and yeah, I just love the inside of this place. It's a little bit, non-symmetrical on these ends, but it's still pretty nice. And the fog floor, of course. Of course, this build, it may look good in the day, but just to wait. Okay, so let me just go over here real quick. I'm going to time set midnight, and this is the time when the build really is at its best. All the lights hang down, and the pixies, it just looks insane. I gotta say, this is probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite build I've ever done, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And just like last video, I'm going to end it in a cinematic. So, let's do it. This build took over 20 hours to make, and I'm very happy with it. And I have even more videos in the future planned like this. So, please consider subscribing. It means a lot. Okay, that's it. The video's over.